Hello and happy Friday, and thanks for tuning into RadioFreeRhinecliff.org and this show in particular. Correcting me if I'm Norm. I'm your host, Norm. I'm thrilled to be here tonight with Caro Kalb-Marr.
Hey, Norm.
Hi, Caro.
How are you?
I'm fine, thanks.
Good.
It's been a week, and now it's over, and you're here. What a treat.
I'm here.
Thank you so much. And as is customary, I went online and snooped around, tried to get a whole bunch of information about you.
You spied on me.
Well, I did research, so I could ask good questions. But the thing that you just said before the theme music started, I couldn't find any of it. And it was your time in the music business.
Yeah, many years.
Yeah.
Many years.
And what kinds of things did you do? Were you a performing artist?
Well, the beginning of my foray into the music business was I was actually in a band when I was in college.
Where was college?
College was in Hiram, Ohio.
Where in the world is Hiram, Ohio?
It's about an hour below Cleveland.
Uh-huh.
But in the boonies,
Right.
cow tipping country. Very quiet.
I don't believe
very
it. Have
quiet.
you ever actually cow-tipped?
Yes.
I think it's a myth. But you say you've actually done it.
Yeah, it's doable.
Okay.
But, you have to really want to do it. So.
And you need a bunch of people, I'm guessing,
Yeah.
because cows are really heavy.
Yeah.
What's the name of this college in the sticks?
Hiram.
It's Hiram College.
Hiram College in Hiram, Ohio.
Are you from around there?
No, I'm from Maplewood, New Jersey, an area that you know,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah.
So went to college and had always loved music, was in all the plays in school and sang in the choral society and things of that nature, and went off to college and really didn't want to be in college, and was playing my guitar one day on the quad, and this guy walked up to me and said, let's play a song together. And I did. And he said, I'm putting a band together with some local people and some people in the college. Would you come and maybe try to sing? And let's see if we can put something together. And we did.
I love that.
And the next thing I knew, I was in a band. The band's name was After All.
After all? Mm-hmm. One word or two? Or?
One.
Uh-huh.
One word.
After all.
After All.
And what kind of music was it? I wish
It was
we
a
had
cover
some
band. It was a cover band, but it was like prog rock, Pink Floyd, yes.
prog rock. King Crimson.
The whole thing, yes. All of that stuff.
Yeah.
And it was great, and we had a great time, and I think we were very well loved, and sort of moved out of playing just in Hiram and the surrounding areas and ended up playing there were a group of clubs in Ohio called the Agoras.
Uh-huh.
And we started playing there and opening up for other bands and whatnot. And so that lasted for a couple of years.
And what was the club in Hiram called? Or were there multiple clubs?
No, there were no clubs in Hiram. We would play at the college and at the local bars up the road. And, little by little, we caught on. So that's how that started.
After all. And did somebody start writing original music?
No, that never happened.
Right.
I think if I had stayed in Ohio, that probably was how things would have progressed. But I decided that it was time to leave and come back to the East Coast.
Uh-huh.
So
and
I did.
Were you there for 4 years?
No, did not finish college.
Uh-huh.
What I learned in college was how to play music in a band, and that I loved the music business.
Right.
I loved all the parts of it where we were getting to the gig and asking for money and making sure that we got fed.
You loved all of that.
I did.
That's the part that most bands complain about.
Yeah, no,
And
I kind of liked that. I liked the machine.
sweet. Uh-huh.
It was interesting to me.
Uh-huh. Well, what songs do you remember After All performing?
Oh my gosh. Close to the Edge.
Uh-huh.
Have a Cigar, Pink Floyd.
Uh-huh.
Just so many.
And so you're singing these Pink Floyd parts. Who is it? Roger Waters? Who sang in that group? I don't even know.
David Gilmour.
David Gilmour.
Yeah, and Roger sang as well.
Right.
And in the early days, it was Syd Barrett.
Right. Amazing.
Yeah.
I would love to hear that.
It was super fun.
Yeah.
But I always had horrible stage fright. I really did.
Well, so that was the part you didn't like about being in a band?
Yeah.
It was the actual performing part?
Yeah.
And did the stage fright sort of dissipate as the set commenced?
Yes. I would always start with my back to the audience.
Just like Miles Davis.
Oh.
Yeah. And what year was this, may I ask?
I want to say 76, 77, 78. Yeah.
And why did you choose Hiram?
Well, I didn't really choose Hiram. My father chose Hiram.
Okay.
He thought I was a handful, and I was. And I had applied to many schools and got into them, Bard being one of them. I would have loved to have come to Bard. But at the end of the day, he said, if you're going to go to college, this is where you're going to go to college.
Really?
Yeah.
And because it was the right size and the right price and far enough away from home?
Yeah, I think it was for him away from home, surrounded by cows. Like, how much trouble could I get into in the country, maybe?
Well, I mean, you could have just jetted out to Bernardsville
I
or
was a
something.
little bit
in
of a
the 70s.
troublemaker, so, you know.
Well, let's sit here for a second. What kind of trouble did you get into? High school in the late 70s?
Yeah, my family was a very sort of artistic family. My father was an attorney, but he also had this other, right left brain thing going on, and he was a really creative guy too. My mother was an artist. She was a painter. And a really, really good artist.
Right.
And at around 14, my father also did black and white photography. He built a dark room in our house, taught me how to do that. We were sort of just really into a lot of different things, and it was a great upbringing. But at around 14, things started to feel a little odd in the house, and he ended up leaving. So, things were a little...
Where did he go?
He went about 2 streets over with someone else.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Well, were you packed with resentment for that?
I would say there was probably some resentment there, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just a shot in the dark.
Yeah, I mean, not to put too fine a point on it, he left, he met someone else, he left. I mean, it happened a lot then. It happens a lot now.
Yeah.
Things happen.
Happens all the
life
time.
happens. But when he left, he kind of left. He left my sister and I too, not just our mom. In that time period.
That's tough.
So I acted out, the way you do. I like to party. I, got into a little bit of trouble, not a lot of trouble, but, I was gregarious.
So in the 70s, the drinking
and it was the
drugs
70s,
and pills
exactly.
and sex and...
I always say the 60s really happened in the 70s.
Yeah.
It was when things took hold.
And was your sister troubled as well?
Yeah, in her own way.
Big sister, little sister?
Big sister, Kathy. She's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is she listening right now?
I think she might be. I hope
Kathy.
so.
I hope she is.
Kath.
And what kind of trouble was she? Let's just dish on Kathy if she's listening.
No, I think it was just
Richard's
a general...
giggling in the background.
I think in general there was sort of a general sense of sadness, for the 3 women who were left behind, my mother, my sister, and I, so...
Right. I'm sorry to hear about that.
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
Makes for an interesting road. You have to figure things out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how did you figure things out?
Well, I got sent off to college, and it wasn't for me. I played in a band, knew that I loved perhaps the business of that machine, and went back to New York City and decided I wanted to be in the music business.
Okay.
And so it was very hard to get into one of these agencies, William Morris, ICM, CAA, back in the day.
Right.
Usually they're looking for college graduates. And if you want to be an agent...
To work cheap.
Yeah.
Right.
And you start in the mailroom and you push the mail cart around and you start at the bottom and then you work your way up to become an agent. But back then, women weren't necessarily considered agent material. But if you wanted to get in, you had to type or take shorthand. I mean, this was the late 70s, right?
Right.
And I didn't do either of those things. So I went to a special school and learned how to do those 2 things.
Nice. I remember those special schools. There were a lot of them around.
There were a lot of them back in the day. So I learned how to do that.
So you moved from this tiny town in Ohio back to New York City.
Back home to New Jersey.
Oh, back to New Jersey.
Right.
And looking for work in New York City.
And then did this school and then took myself into New York City and went to ABC, NBC, CBS, and all of the agencies. I just wanted to sort of cover all my bases.
Right.
And, back then, the rule of thumb was if you walked into an HR office, they had to take your resume. Even if you didn't have an appointment. I didn't make an appointment. I just showed up.
Right.
Sometimes you have to get in somebody's way so that they can see you. So that's what I did. And I knew that I wanted the William Morris Agency because their roster of bands at the time was really, really good.
Who was on their roster?
David Bowie, Genesis, all kinds of really great people.
And so now we're talking like 1980?
Now we're talking 1979.
Okay.
Maybe around
Which
then.
was an amazing year for music.
Yeah. So I showed up at the William Morris Agency and it was in the MGM building, 55th and 6th.
Okay.
And went up to the 30th floor where the HR office was. And I basically said, here I am. And, here's my resume, which showed my typing skills and my steno skills.
Did you have the band on there?
I'm sorry?
The band
No, the band was
not on your resume.
no.
The experience of
No, and
touring
that was purposeful because, you don't go looking for work in this business saying I'm a musician, to go into an agency because they're not going to consider you. They're going to just think you're looking for maybe representation.
Right.
And that's not what was happening with me at all. So that was not on the resume.
Right.
It was a very short resume, but, it said I could type this many words a minute and I could do steno. And so they gave me a test. And after some haggling, she gave me the test. She said, well, I'm not just going to send you in to the head of HR. And I said, well, you might want to because I'm here and, you never know.
And I'm awesome. And
so she gave me a typing test and a steno test, and I aced that. And she said, just wait a minute. And the next thing I knew, I was in his name was Ed Corey. I remember him so well.
Ed Corey.
Ed Corey. He was the head of H&R at William Morris back in the day. And we chatted just like you and I are now. And he said, I don't have any assistant positions open, but I'm going to create something for you. He said, I'm going to create a position where you show up every day. And if an assistant calls in sick, you'll go and sit in that desk so we don't have to call a temp agency. And if there's more than one assistant out, then we'll call the temp agency for the second person. But you'll sit in the most important desk for the day. A
solid HR move.
Yeah. So he created this thing. I was a floater.
Oh, geez.
Called me Caro the Floater.
Caro the
So I
Floater.
sat at amazing desks in the film department all over the agency until the day that I got to sit with the head of the rock and roll department.
And then what happened?
And his assistant was sick, and she remained sick for about 5 days. And this is hard to say, but when she came back, she was the floater. And that's how that happened.
And she was just like staring daggers
It was
at
not
the back
good.
of your head the whole time.
It was not comfortable.
Do you remember her name?
I don't. I'm sure I've completely blocked it.
How long did you work in the same office in the uncomfortable daggers with
Well,
this?
she was now
floater.
floating, and I was working for the head of the rock and roll department. So,
And who was that?
That was a man named Wayne Forte, and he's still an agent in the business.
Wow.
He runs a small agency now called Entourage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Entourage.
So that lasted for a while. So that was my entree into that world.
Amazing. What do you think? Why do you think Ed Corey wanted you to be in that organization? Didn't want to let you go out and maybe work for NBC or somebody?
I don't know. I really don't know, but sometimes that kind of magic happens. You connect with somebody and
sometimes
and that happened. That happened that day.
Right.
And yeah, I had a job.
And so you had a job. It was a good job. It was a famously misogynist industry.
Yeah.
Especially in the late 70s, early
Yeah.
80s. Did you run up against a lot of sexism and, guys hitting on you and stuff like that?
There was some of that, but I have to say, in all honesty, no, it wasn't terrible.
That's amazing.
For me. And especially you would think in the rock world, and, musicians and being on the road and all of that, it would be really, really difficult, but it wasn't. I could hang with the guys.
Right.
I could just do it.
Yeah.
And
you stood up
I
for yourself.
felt like I got their respect. I worked hard. If there was a question, I knew the answer.
And so how long did you work in that department, in the rock department?
I stayed at William Morris for not that long because I actually got poached by Neil Sedaka to go and work for him personally.
So Neil Sedaka, he was, I'm guessing, being managed by the rock department.
He was being represented for live performances through the agency, through William Morris, and not in the rock department. It was a different department that dealt more with the comedians and singers like Neil. They were sort of...
what other singers were like Neil Sedaka?
I'm trying to think who else, they may have represented back then.
And he was a prolific songwriter too, right?
He is, but he wasn't like a hard rock guy.
No.
He was, back then he was still touring, but he was also playing at Harrah's.
Right.
He was doing Atlantic City and he was doing Reno and so it was a little bit of a different booking model.
So somehow you crossed paths with Neil Sedaka.
Well, there was an agent, one of his agents at William Morris, whose name was Arthur Moskowitz. And I was walking down the hall, and literally, it was like a movie. He grabbed my arm and pulled me into his office, and he said, "I need you to go and work for Neil Sedaka." And I was like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
And he said, "Neil's assistant, his personal assistant, is leaving, and he's about to start a tour, and I need someone in there who I think could get the job done for him and do the work and that we know." And I remember thinking, okay, that sounds interesting. Like I was always more of a why not kind of person.
I think that's a recipe for
So I went and I met
life.
him and his wife, Liba Sedaka, who was actually his manager. And their office was on West 57th Street, right next to my apartment. And seemed like maybe a good idea. They liked me, I liked them, and so I went and worked for Neil Sedaka.
And how long did that last?
That lasted a couple of years, I think.
I
mean, my timelines are kind of funny. But...
So you were a personal assistant, professional assistant, like you were the assistant?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so did you tour with them as well?
I did. I wasn't always on the road because there was a lot of responsibility that had to do with, the bigger part of his life. When you're a PA, it's not just that. It's sort of everything.
Right.
So I would be in the office. I would go on the road. I would go back to the office. It was,
And you're like 24 or something? 26?
No, younger. I want to say
22.
22, 23 at that point, something like that.
So,
but I remember meeting some really interesting people through Neil. He had quite an interesting crew around him. Not the people you would think. He was friendly with Edgar and Johnny Winter, the Winter
Really?
Brothers.
Sure.
He was friendly with Dan Hartman and the New York Dolls.
Were they both albinos, the Winter Brothers?
Were they what?
Both albino.
Yeah. Yes.
One of them was.
Yes, Edgar.
Who
But
did that song
Johnny-
Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Which every high school band tried to cover and just miserably.
And they would come over to the Sedaka's apartment and, hang out. If there was a
love that.
party, they would be there.
Sorry, you were saying who else?
Dan Hartman from the New York Dolls, who had just written a song for a movie that was coming out called Streets of Fire with Michael Paré and Diane Lane. And so I was involved in that whole thing and a party at Studio 54 for the movie. And so, when you work for these people, the tentacles reach out in strange directions.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like kind of an amazing gig for a young woman in New York City.
It was. I was having a good time.
Right.
Yeah.
And so why and how did that end?
Well, it didn't end for a long time. Eventually, I ended up going back to an agency called QBQ, and worked with a man named Dennis Arfa, who's still very big in the agency world today. And I was there for 5 years and got to work with Metallica and Billy Joel and Duran Duran and just so many great acts.
Pretty good acts in the mid-'80s.
Yeah, it was. Well, this was now, and we were getting further into the 90s by the time I went to QBQ. So that was a fantastic experience. But, it's a lot. It's a lot, when you're working with a lot of bands at the same time.
And doing what kinds of things? Well,
I was Dennis's first assistant at the agency. So that means you're kind of overseeing everything that's going on. So it was tour-related stuff. It was all these tours, Def Leppard and Billy Joel, and then the Billy and Elton tour, that first tour, the Face-to-Face tour, we did that.
Right.
The Metallica Black Album tour happened when I was there, and that was a 3-year thing. That was, I think, 91, 92, 93.
So you probably got tickets to every venue all over the country whenever you wanted.
But I didn't want tickets to any shows. Basically we were working shows. So when I would go to the shows, it would be, our acts, and we would be backstage and whatnot. I mean, sometimes maybe I would go and see someone else, but we were pretty busy.
And at that point, apart from the bands you managed, what was the music you really loved? Or did you get home from work and be like, oh, no more music?
No, I mean, I love so many different types of music that, from show tunes and, from watching Gigi or, I grew up going to Broadway.
Right.
So cast albums were always on the radar. I love all kinds of music, but I do love heavy metal. That's definitely on my playlist. Yeah. But so is like weird lo-fi music.
Yeah. Such as
like John Mouse or Ariel Pink,
uh-huh.
or going all the way back to Todd Rundgren's early stuff from across the river at Bearsville when he was recording everything himself and it was imperfect. I like lo-fi stuff,
right,
more than hi-fi stuff. But I love all kinds of music.
Now, he just played a couple of weeks ago, I think.
He played I think he played on Wednesday night.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you see him?
I didn't see him.
What's the last concert you saw?
The last concert I saw was Hans Zimmer in Montreal about 4 weeks ago.
Wow.
And it was amazing.
Nice. And did you fly up expressly to see that concert or drive up or?
Yes.
Just to see that concert?
Yes.
Love that.
That's exactly why we went to Montreal. I dragged my sister with me, and it was to see Hans Zimmer. I think he's a genius, and I wanted to participate in that as an audience member.
Had you seen him before?
Never. Mm-mm.
Mm-hmm. Would you see him again?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would see him again.
Now I got to check out Hans Zimmer. I don't really know this.
Well, he writes film scores.
Okay.
And you've heard a lot of his music. You just don't know it.
Right.
So look into him. It's really, really interesting. And he's gathered this incredible group of musicians around him.
Uh-huh.
He has 2 female drummers that are drumming for him and all kinds of violinists and cello players. But it's a very electric set. I mean, he's a synthesizer guy.
Okay.
So it's beautiful.
Love that.
Yeah.
And people dancing and
people being really excited to be there. Yeah.
Nicely
I mean,
put.
you don't go to a Hans Zimmer concert unless you know who Hans Zimmer is, right?
Sure.
And he's not on the tip of everybody's tongue. So everyone who was there was really happy to be there, and they were there for the right reason.
Right.
To hear this man's music.
I love that. And what's next? What's the next show? Do you have tickets right now for any future?
No. I don't go to a lot of shows.
Oh.
Having been there, done that, I'm interested in doing other things now.
Such as
riding my horse, being at the barn.
Is it the Crazy Horse?
My Crazy Horse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Coco? Was that the horse's name?
Yeah, Coco Loco.
Yeah, now
But she's really actually, she's not crazy. She's quite gentle, but
she's just horny.
But she's marish.
According to your essay.
She's marish. Yeah, she can be.
Is that the euphemism? Marish?
Yes, she's marish.
Oh, excuse my crass description. She's marish. And how old is this mare?
She is going to be 21 in January.
And which in like horse years, I mean, how long?
She's not a youngin' anymore.
But she's still
marish.
But
she's still marish, yeah. Yes.
So you have this blog, and you write these beautiful, very short essays about this or that and the other. And one of them is about...
I do that without any consistency whatsoever. I'm not...
2024 has been a good year for you.
Okay.
You've written a bunch of stuff. And you wrote about getting the horse and how marish this horse was. Is that unusual for a horse to be that?
No. I mean, if you have a mare, she comes into season. And
when is the season?
It's in the spring.
Oh,
and
that's a good time for it.
She cycles, in and out of season. And so that's instinctual, right?
Sure.
A
biological imperative.
It's a biological thing, right?
Yeah.
But she's a little vocal about it.
And then, what does that mean?
It means, she whinnies and whatnot, but she also gets some help with a hormone that settles her down. So that's a good thing. Because there's not going to be any satisfaction for her.
But in your blog, you described getting her and then like sort of hooking her up.
I did not hook her up.
It sounded like a tawdry. You referred to her as a trollop.
She is a trollop because of her behavior. I got her, and it was in the spring or early summer, and she immediately dropped into a heat, and all of the geldings took notice, and there was a lot of screaming going on.
The geldings, so they're missing a key part of their equipment. If I understand this correctly.
Correct.
But they have this other part still.
Yes.
I'm guessing.
Correct.
And so they can,
for some reason, they took notice of Coco. For whatever reason.
So when you say she sort of dropped into heat, what does that look like when a horse does that? I don't know anything about horses.
Well.
I mean, can you sort of see it?
It's a behavior. It's a behavior. For instance, she might turn her tail towards a horse and then lift her tail and sort of show herself.
I see.
Yeah. That's sort of how it might look.
and I'm guessing, in fact, did look.
Yeah. It looked like that.
And so back then...
And mind you, I really had no horse knowledge. So all of this was new to me.
So why did you get a horse if you didn't have horse knowledge?
You're kind of looking at the little girl who always wanted a pony.
Okay.
Yeah, I was that girl.
I see.
And so...
And how's that going for you?
It's going really, really well.
Finally got the...
It's going really well.
Horny pony.
I love her. I love... the fantastic horse women and men that I've met.
Right.
I love the barn where we are. There's a community there. It's wonderful. It's being outside a lot in upstate New York with a horse and around horses is a pretty magnificent thing.
And is that the same barn where Freya is kept?
Correct.
No, Frey is the horse of Frey Johnson.
Of Frey, yeah.
A mutual friend of ours.
Yes, our friend Frey.
Who had a ridiculously freaky medical accident.
Yeah, it was. And something happened that I'd never even heard of.
I'd never
before.
heard of it.
Yeah.
Like out of the blue. He's like working out. Next thing you know, everything's just gone to. It
was really alarming.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I've told you, but you took a lead online on Facebook, filling people in on what was happening with Frey.
Yeah.
And also putting out this fundraiser.
At his request and with his permission.
Well, it's beautiful.
We did that because he's a friend of mine, and I went to see him 2 days after this event, and it was emotional and scary. And so that's what we do, right? We do the next right thing.
Many people do, but you did it in this case, and thank you. It's a beautiful thing. If people wanted to, offhand, if people wanted to donate to his Fund Me thing.
It's Spot Fund, and you would you would go there and type in Frey's name.
Frey Johnson with two S's.
Exactly.
Right?
Or they could, if you're a friend of Frey's and you are friends on Facebook, you can find it there or on my page.
Right.
Yeah.
And every little bit helps.
Every little bit helps.
And while I've got you here, let me just ask. His hands are doing better. His legs, he's walking some.
He is. He's really improved. I mean, this happened in June, and so his improvement is extraordinary. Right. I think from not being able to walk or really move at all.
Right.
I had never heard of a spinal aneurysm.
No.
It's a stroke in your spine. Usually when you think stroke, you're thinking of something more cerebral.
Right.
But this was an aneurysm at the top of his spine, and I think he's going to come back. Yeah, that's what I think.
Is that the medical decision, the prognosis?
I think they're not comfortable saying things like that.
Sure.
But watching him, he may, who knows? It might not be 100%, but it's going to be pretty close.
Right.
I really believe that.
Right.
Yeah. He
was here. I interviewed him.
I know.
In the spring.
It was right before. Yeah. He was here with you.
Yeah.
Very, the time, I think it was like a week before maybe.
Oof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's doing great, Norm. So
good. Well, thanks again for that. Mm-hmm. So you said something that just really hit me about your parents being very artistic and doing. One of them did paintings, the other did photography. Is that what you said? He
did. My father did a lot of photography, and there was a time I remember he also carved blocks of wood.
Uh-huh.
He did that. He also flew. He learned how to fly and had a plane, and he was an interesting man.
And you look black and white photography?
Yes, black and white.
Did he shoot any black and white photography of like waterscapes?
No, he didn't shoot waterscapes.
You're getting a big smile from your husband here, who does the most beautiful black and white art. Some graphite, some painted, I think.
That's my favorite art of Richard's is actually his black and white charcoal studies.
Right.
And he's also a fantastic painter, but I love the black and white studies.
Yeah. Right. Any relation to Johnny Marr?
My brother's name is Johnny, but that's not the guy.
That's not the guy. Yeah, and what is Richard's website?
OVO.gallery. What is? Yeah. www.ovo.gallery. That's it. Yeah.
And that's it's Richard's website, but it's also the website for the OVO Gallery.
We had opened a gallery in South Orange, New Jersey. I was just looking for a space for Richard when we were still back in New Jersey for him to have a studio.
Right.
And so I rented this great space in South Orange Village.
Uh-huh.
And we signed the lease and we were moving stuff in. And then the village came to us and said, it was a storefront. And they said, you have to open this to the public. You can't just, use it as your private space. So I became sort of an accidental gallerist at that point.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Huh. Isn't that interesting? They're like, it's retail space. You can't not open your doors for retail.
Right. And I said, well, not every day, right? And they said, yeah, no, just once in a while. And I said, that I can do.
Once in a while.
That I can do. Once in a while I can do. I'll figure it out.
And so did it have windows on the street?
It did. Yeah. It did.
And how was that for Richard?
I had big curtains that I would leave closed.
Richard's here.
His studio was in the back.
Okay.
And once this happened, once the town said you're going to need to do something with this space, his painting happened in the back. It was a very sort of long, thin space, really tall. And I set up the front as a gallery and started looking for artists that maybe I thought I could help.
And did you have to look for artists? I sort of feel like if you've got a gallery, artists are just like, hey, give me a show.
Yes. Once it's known that you have a gallery, people really
Very
knock on your
friendly.
door, and it's hard because there's this idea, and I believe in this idea, that when you walk into an art gallery, you're learning more about the gallerist than you are about the art on the walls.
Right.
Because they're only going to do a show. I think that speaks to them, that moves them, that thinks there's something worthwhile there, and that's a very personal thing.
Yeah.
So, it's hard to say no, but you have to say no sometimes.
Right. Yeah.
So I went looking for things that I thought other people would like, that I liked initially.
Right.
And the first show I did with a photographer and a sculptor. And I think I sold almost every piece of sculpture in that show. It was pretty extraordinary.
And so what were you doing for work at this point in time?
I was not working.
Okay.
Richard and I had gotten married. My last gig in the music business was with Roger Waters.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, as his PA. And also I
How
started...
long did you do that for?
For about 5 years. I started because he was looking for someone to... His team was looking for someone who could do pre-production and rehearsals, really, for his first tour in what would have been maybe, 10 years. He hadn't been on the road.
Okay.
And at that point in time, I was living in Sag Harbor, and he wanted to come and do pre-production and rehearse out on the east end of Long Island. So I got a phone call, and I did that work for him. And we did all the rehearsals out there, and then months and months and months of production rehearsals and getting the whole tour together in that way. And then they went off on the road, and about 6 months later, he called me and asked if I would stay on.
Right.
So I did.
And you were not yet married?
No,
Right.
not married. We hadn't even met at that point.
And well, when did that happen and how?
That's a whole other show.
Oh, we have 3 hours
That's
left
a
tonight.
whole other show. But I think the easy explanation is that we met because of a mutual friend. And
Bruce Springsteen?
no. But we met because of a mutual friend, and at some point made a choice to be together. And Richard had 2 young children, and I needed to make, a different kind of a life at that point.
Right.
So,
Because you loved Richard, but if you wanted him, you got these kids too.
yeah, exactly.
And had you...
And I was crazy about his children, and it was time to make a different kind of promise. So,
And how old were the kids when you all settled down? Or tied the knot?
well, blended families they take some work, but
Yeah.
I think that all the adults did their best, and we're all friends, and the kids are in their 30s now, and so
how
things
old-
worked out.
How old were they when y'all first met?
When we first met, I think 9 and 14.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, 9 and 13. So it's been a while.
Yeah.
And we're still doing it. So I think something must be working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. And had you decided prior to that you didn't want kids, or did you sort of think you did want kids, or?
Personally, in my life, I didn't have
You
that
didn't have
kind
any-
of a life.
you-
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah. Children were not going to be a part of my life. My
Right.
own children.
And you were okay with that because you sounded like you had
Yeah,
an amazing
yeah.
life.
I had to be okay with that, and I was, and
Right.
it was fine. And when children did come into my life, they were 2 extraordinary young people.
Right.
So it's been sort of amazing to watch them grow up and
How sweet.
be a little part of that, maybe.
And how old are they now?
They are 37 and 33, yeah.
And you say be a little part of that. Do they tell you occasionally, like,
Well,
what,
they
you
lived
were
with us
such-
half the time.
Oh, they
It was
do?
an every other week situation.
Oh, they
they
did.
did.
Right.
That's how we all moved forward together, including their mother.
Right.
They were with their mother one week, and then with us.
And,
the next
but
week.
Now they're older. Do they share with you, like, oh, you were a wonderful influence? And
Yeah, we see them. I love them.
Richard says yes.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Abby is living up in Albany, which is one of the reasons that we landed in upstate New York, and also because our son Gabe is just down the road in New Jersey, and it's much easier for us to see both of them from here.
Right.
And that's paramount. That's paramount to us, is to be able to see them when they want to be seen.
Are there grandkids?
No. No grandkids.
So you said that's how you chose Rhinebeck. When did that happen? Did you choose it just because it was a nice place, sort of conveniently located?
Well, it happened. It's going to be 6 years. We've been here for 6 years. I can't believe it. Of course, COVID sort of threw everybody's timeline off. I feel like I missed 2 years in some way. But we've been in Rhinebeck for 6 years. Prior to that, we had a place in Maplewood, New Jersey, and a place in Sag Harbor.
Wow.
And the whole Sag Harbor thing had gotten, for me, and I think for Richard, a little unbearable.
How so?
Too many people. Sag Harbor was kind of like this little holdout out in the Hamptons.
Right.
It was still, this beautiful little village that hadn't been inundated with the kind of celebrity that some of the other East End towns had been.
Right.
And then that changed.
And what year are we talking about here?
We're talking about...
We bought in 2012.
We bought the house out there in 2012, and we bought up here in 2018.
Right.
So it was that between those years, it really sort of became one of these go-to places for all kinds of people.
Right. Do you see Rhinebeck undergoing any similar sort of changes like that?
Well, it's not the Rhinebeck that we moved into in 2018.
Yeah.
In 2019, before COVID. It's
changed so much.
Yeah, in just this short time.
Right.
Yeah.
And so how's that sitting with you?
I love Rhinebeck. I'm okay with it.
Right.
I don't think it will ever be what the East End of Long Island looks like. First of all, there are places you can actually get in your car and go. Out there, you're surrounded by water. There's nowhere to go.
Right.
You're sort of stuck on 27 out there with all of these people and all of these bodies and all of these cars. And it's beautiful. Don't get me wrong. We'd outgrown the vibe out there.
And so you knew about Rhinebeck, or did you discover Rhinebeck Sunday
Richard
drive,
said, would you consider looking upstate? Abby is in Albany, and she was going to be getting married, and Gabe's in New Jersey, and it would be sort of this easy way for the family to just be able to get together when we wanted to get together. And I was like, sure. Richard had gone to Beacon, and he had gone to Dia, and he fell in love with Beacon. So what we did was we went to Dia together and went to Beacon. And I was like, no, this doesn't feel quite right. And so I started looking and found Germantown, Tivoli, Rhinebeck. And that sort of felt right. So we started looking at houses, and we ended up right in the village of Rhinebeck.
Wow.
Yeah.
And did you live in the village in Sag Harbor?
Yeah.
Okay, so you knew small town village
And also
living.
Maplewood, New Jersey.
Right.
So basically, we're village people. We really are.
I was just talking with a friend today about the doughboy in town, which I always dubbed like the sixth village person.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've tuned into that. So has it been everything that you hoped it would be when you moved in?
I don't think that we came here with expectations.
Uh-huh.
I think we're a little peripatetic. We can be happy wherever we are.
Right.
Basically. So yeah, we just sort of, we moved here, didn't know anybody, not one person, and just sort of dove in. And got up every day, did what we did, and eventually, we had great neighbors who invited us over, and we started to meet people, and that's why village life is so good too, because you're surrounded by people,
Right.
and it feels insulated and a little bit safe. I was talking to my friend about this today. We're not getting younger, we're getting older, and so it feels good to be in a village, surrounded by people, surrounded by services. Yeah, it's a wonderful place.
Right. You think you'll stay here for a while?
Maybe.
The peripatetic
Maybe.
Kalb-Marrs.
Maybe.
You know,
Today, yeah.
Not making any promises.
I'll probably be here tomorrow. Honey, we'll be here tomorrow, right? Yeah.
And so you've got a nice house in the village.
You've been to our house?
I have.
Yes, you have.
It's a beautiful house.
Thank you.
And I met you two at an open studio thing.
You came to one of Richard's open studios.
Was it the Labor Day? Was it the Art Studio Views thing that Joanna Hess does?
Yeah.
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 And it was so amazing.
Did you come to the performance piece?
I did. I came to the performance. I think there were two of them. I missed the first one, but I saw the second one.
Okay.
But if you've done those, have you gone out and about in the Art Studio View things?
Yes, we have.
Yeah,
the first year we were here, we went out and visited other studios.
I love doing that.
Yeah, it's extraordinary.
And you meet lots of nice people. Mm-hmm. You see some good art and some art that's not to your taste. And when I walked into, you're in the chocolate factory, is that what it's called?
Yes.
When I walked into that, it felt like a gallery, Richard's studio. I was just blown away. I'm like, this stuff is fucking amazing. Just in a different league, and so
you,
beautiful.
Norm.
But the even more remarkable part of that was how just genuinely enthusiastic you were about his work and selling his work and explaining his art.
I am.
And taking time. It was such a lovely...
I am. For me, I love Richard's work and I love his passion. He's a schooled artist. He's really, really good. His technique is beautiful.
It's nuts. It's so good.
He makes beautiful paintings. He creates amazing studies. He's extraordinarily good. And during COVID, it was so funny. I thought, let me see if I can sell some of these studies because they're just sitting in these bins. Because for Richard, he was doing these studies as studies for potential paintings. Right. And I saw the studies as a finished piece of art.
Right.
And so I created another page on the website and started, sending it out there. And during COVID, people were buying those studies,
Right.
It made them feel good. It made them, a lot of this, these vistas of the river, of the water, whatever that was.
Him, they inhabited this liminal space.
Yes.
But for you, they were finished.
Right.
Liminal space, a term I looked up. I thought I knew sort of what it meant. I was pretty close. Mm-hmm. But because one of your blogs, one of your recent ones, is about that.
Yep.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, what do you want to know?
Well, you said some interesting things. Don't make me quote you. About that space, the space of transitions.
Yeah.
And how people move through them, but you could move through them with presence of mind, I think
correct.
Was your essay.
A liminal space, to me, it's an interesting concept because, in a sense, today is a liminal space, right? It's the space between yesterday and tomorrow, provided tomorrow comes, right? So how are we going to move through today?
Right.
And there are other types of liminal spaces, like, for instance, our friend Frey is certainly in a liminal space.
Right.
This is a huge transition for him. And it's really, for me, a liminal space is kind of always happening. Like, how am I going to get from here to there to the next minute? And trying to be present enough to be aware of what I'm doing at any given moment.
Right.
To not sort of just not think about what I'm doing.
Right. And in your essay, you talk about Buddha and Marcus Aurelius and Memento Mori and these various paths to beautiful mindfulness. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to ask about this because when I wrote the thing for this...
And about understanding that you're going to die.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And you wrote about that a lot. And
yeah.
various people who talked about that.
Yeah.
And the meditation on death. Mm-hmm. I forget what it's called. There was a name for this Buddhist meditation on death.
Yeah. And they do this, the Montserrati meditation. They do it to remind themselves that this is all very, very, very temporary. Everything is temporary. So how are you going to do it? Knowing that it's all going to disappear in one way or another. It also, for me, it makes me value the time that I do have.
Right.
It feels much more precious.
So does that imbue you with sort of a sense of urgency?
No.
Like death could be any second. I need to get stuff done.
No, it's not. It doesn't feel like that at all.
Uh-huh.
No, it
That's
just
good.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't
that would
feel
be pretty
that.
tiring.
Yeah.
But why not? Why wouldn't that fill you with,
maybe
or
a better,
people in general with urgency?
Maybe a better way to describe it is that I would like to get something done. So I try to get things done.
Right.
But I don't feel like I have to get things done, like I'm, running around like a headless chicken trying to get a million things done when there's no way to do a million things.
Right.
So this thing is in front of me. I need to get this done. Let me get this done and try to do it well.
Right.
It's more like that.
It sounds like a lovely attitude for life.
Am I 100% successful all the time? No, but that's the goal.
Yeah, and I'll bet you're not too hard on yourself when you're not successful in that.
Yeah, I try not to be too hard on myself.
Uh-huh.
I'm not always successful at that either, but I do try.
And how did you come to the, what was it called, the Maranasati meditation?
Just through reading.
Uh-huh.
Just through reading. There was a time when I sort of went into a pretty deep yoga practice, and I got certified in children's yoga because I wanted to teach underserved children in Bridgehampton, New York.
Uh-huh.
There was a camp that they went in the summer, these underserved children. I thought, wouldn't it be great to bring a yoga practice there? And I was already studying on the East End of Long Island. So I went back to New York and got certified in children's yoga and then started a program out there. And so through my studying on the yoga mat, you learn a lot of things that are not just asana. It's not just moving. It's also thoughts and ideologies and all kinds of things like that.
Right. It's often all tied up with this sort of Buddhist thought.
Yeah, exactly.
So you had a happy yoga practice of your own. Mm-hmm. You wanted to do the stuff for kids. What were the kids' yoga things that were surprising to you, that were really different from adult yoga stuff that you'd been doing?
Well, I worked with two different age groups, 3 to 5, 6, I would say 3 to 6, and then 7 to 9. The really young ones were actually so present. They would listen. They would get excited. They would stand up. They would, basically we were making shapes. Let's make the shape of a tree. Let's make the shape of a bird. Let's make the shape of a frog, and they were completely present and into it. The 7 to 9-year-olds, that was a challenge. That was a real challenge because they, I think, were already understanding that they could be seen and be embarrassed, that they could embarrass themselves. That was the sense I was getting from them at 7 to 9, from 7, 8, 9
They
year
were
olds.
okay doing things that might make them look silly.
That they weren't okay doing
they
things
weren't.
that might make them look silly.
That seems more age.
Right. Their ego was all like,
Yeah.
tied up in what we were trying to teach them, the opposite.
Right. This
like, forget
freedom.
that.
Right.
It's just you and your mat. But it was really hard. But, I had some breakthroughs. So it was good. It was challenging.
Right.
It was enjoyable. I loved it. I love teaching children's yoga.
Love that. Do you do that now?
I don't. When we came up here, I was busy, I think, trying to incorporate myself into Rhinebeck. And then pretty quickly, COVID happened. We got here right before COVID, basically. Right. And, then I got 3 years older. And I have a horse, and I have other things, and I think that's that won't be happening again. I think teaching children's yoga is not something that I'll revive at this point.
That's too bad. It sounds awesome, and I'll bet you're amazing.
Well,
at it.
maybe, but it's not something I'm thinking about today.
Right.
Yeah.
So you've got the horse, you've got other things. You are a lovely representative, agent for your husband's
I am.
artwork.
I'm my husband's agent. Yeah.
What are the other things that you've got?
Well, right now, for instance, the past 3 months, I've been busy with a friend who's needed attention. Our friend Frey. I had another friend who has moved into the area, and she was staying with us for a while. So we had a house guest, and that was pretty great.
Yeah.
But I have to be honest, the horse life thing, that can take up a lot of your time. I mean, I want to most days get up and go to the barn. So that...
And do you go there first thing in the morning?
I do. I like to go early. I like to go early-ish. I think this winter it might have to shift to a little bit later.
Because
my body is not able to handle that kind of cold, at 7 a.m.
And so how many days of the year do you ride your horse? You crazy Coco, them.
I want to say at least 3 days a week, sometimes more.
Right.
Sometimes more. Yeah. She's a little lame right now in her front right leg. So we're treating her and trying to figure out where the problem is. But I was there today and I got on her back and,
right.
That's trotted around a little bit. But
and
she's got a doctor's appointment. So Dr. Mark will come and check her out next week. So.
Dr. Mark?
Yeah.
Mark, who? Is his name something like Steve Mark or... Is it Mark Wilson or
I don't.
You don't know. It's just Dr. Mark.
Dr. Mark to me. Yeah. Dr. Mark.
I love that.
Yeah.
And so how does it happen that a horse goes a little bit lame? Do they step on
it could
something?
It could be anything. I mean, she, we sprain an ankle.
Right.
We step on a stone the wrong way too hard. Or it could be something else, something to be figured out.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I hope it works out with crazy Coco.
So do I.
I wanted to ask: do you do any drawing or painting, or
no.
do you make any?
No.
Did you ever?
No. My sister is also, I think, a great artist,
right.
and she made a career in digital art. She creates, shows and the visuals for huge companies. So she was sort of kind of like in show business, but it was more on a corporate level, designing
right
what these shows looked like.
Right.
Yeah.
Huh.
A graphic designer, basically.
And when you look back on your life of art appreciation, be it music or visual art or movies or whatever, is there something that stands out in terms of changing the way you see the world around you?
One specific thing?
Anything.
Well, I think all of it.
Right.
I think I was born with that spark, and I think you might understand what I'm talking about because you're a performer.
It's so
it's
joyful.
It's something that you can't rent, you can't buy. It doesn't come from the outside. When you love the arts, you love the arts, and that's sort of just where you operate from. I've always operated from that place.
Well, it's a beautiful place, and I'm so happy that you brought that place here. And the hour's up. It's flown by. Yeah.
Thanks, Norm.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
And sharing your stories. And Richard, thanks for being the moral support here. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. Have a happy Friday and a fabulous weekend.